Good morning, aspirants. It's 24th of September today, and I welcome you all on today's edition of What to Read in the Hindu newspaper. I'm 𝗗𝗶𝗹𝘆 𝗡𝗲, Senior Mentor at Prepp IAS. While going through the articles, we will not only see its relevance with regard to prelims and mains, but we'll also try interlink it with other GS papers as well. I am here to align your newspaper reading as a part of our GS syllabus. The very first article that is worth our attention in today's edition of Hindu newspaper is about India-China primary funders of Russian war, says Trump at UNGA. Now, there are several angles associated with this particular article that can be thought of. The very first one, when we map it in our syllabus, will fall under GS paper 2, primarily international relationships, wherein India and US relationship can be read and analyzed, but at the same time, multilateral organization such as UNGA, its reform that is need of the hour. Afterwards, multilateral diplomacy can also be read and revised. Afterwards, this is also relevant for and can also be linked with GS paper 3 as well, wherein economy, trade, tariff policy, type of tariff policy, they all can be read and revised. From essay perspective, this particular article is to be seen through the lens of global geopolitics, multipolarity that is right now present in current today's scenario. The key theme that if we have to say this particular article talks about, US often accuses India and China for Russian oil trade, and that eventually is fueling Russia-Ukraine war. Afterwards, from prelims perspective, the areas that we have to revise is about sanctions, UNGA powers, knowing about NATO countries, which new countries have actually launched this particular organization, NATO. What is the parallel of NATO established by then USSR and now Russia, then Russia-Ukraine crisis, energy security, trade routes, all these angles can be read and revised. Moving on, the next important article that is there in the paper and that requires our attention talks about criminal past cannot be the ground to deny bail. Now, this is relevant with regard to GS paper 2 polity, wherein bail as a condition has been talked about. So this, when we map it in our syllabus, will fall under GS paper 2 polity, wherein judiciary, bail jurisprudence, fundamental rights, all these angles can be read and revised. Afterwards, this is also relevant for GS paper 1, wherein society, rule of law, social justice can be read and revised. The key theme that has been discussed in this particular article and being emphasized by Supreme Court primarily talks about Supreme Court reaffirms bail is the rule, jail is the exception, even with criminal antecedents. Now, the real question comes, when it comes to common man, this is being denied. But there are several criminal, heinous crime committed against them. They are being given bail and parole time and all. So from prelims perspective, if we have to analyze this particular article, we need to know and brush up our knowledge upon the judgments associated with bail provisions, such as B.R. Krishna Iyer principle that has been given with regard to granting bail. Afterwards, we need to know exact difference what is bail, anticipatory bail, and parole. Each of them. Afterwards, from mains perspective, this particular article is to be seen through the lens of judicial activism versus individual liberty, social justice, wherein right of under trials can be linked. At the same time, we need to know the exact data. How much percentage of the prisoners that is there in the jail are in under trial process. At the same time, we can even interlink this with ethics paper, wherein balancing justice with fairness can be quoted as an example. In this manner, this particular article is to be seen. Moving on, the next important article that is there in the paper and that catches our attention is on editorial page, and that talks about penalty in proportion. So when we map this particular article, this will fall under GS paper 2 polity, wherein freedom of speech and defamation law can be quoted. For GS paper 4 as well, ethics, wherein reputation versus free speech can be analyzed. The key theme that has been discussed in this particular article primarily talks about misuse of criminal defamation against journalists, politicians, and activists. From prelims perspective, we need to know about Article 19(1)(a). This afterwards, reasonable restrictions are there, but on what ground? All those grounds are to be read and revised. Afterwards, what is the difference between criminal defamation versus civil defamation? Key cases associated with it. Case instance, Subramaniam Swamy case of 2016. Its judgment can be read and revised. From mains perspective, this article is to be seen through the lens of balancing free speech and reputation. From governance perspective, knowing what is chilling effect and misuse of law. Afterwards, when it comes to ethics, this can be seen as an analogy wherein truth versus reputation can be analyzed, and misuse of power, this can also be linked. In this particular manner, this article is to be analyzed holistically, mapping all the possible GS papers and where all it can be quoted. Afterwards, the next important article that is there in the paper and that catches our attention talks about lessons from India's vaccination drive. Now, when we map this particular topic, this will fall under GS paper 2 health, under which universal immunization program, Mission Indradhanush, vaccine Maitri, all these themes can be read and revised. I have already underlined several important pointers with regard to it. At the same time, how many diseases are being addressed in this UIP, that is Universal Immunization Program? For GS paper 3, this particular article is relevant with regard to science and tech, wherein digital health platforms like UWin and CoWin has how revolutionized the process of immunization. Afterwards, this can even be linked with GS paper 1 society, wherein child mortality and maternal health with evidences from National Family Health Survey data can be linked and revised. For essay paper as well, this can be seen as a public health and innovation. Also, global leadership that India has showcased in many of the sectors can be quoted and replicated in other countries as well. Afterwards, we can talk about Universal Immunization Program, its achievement. Afterwards, the innovations that we have done in health sector. India is said to be global vaccination hub. How can India use it as a soft power in global diplomacy? Afterwards, from mains perspective, India's health model and pandemic preparedness can be quoted. One health approach, what is it? Cold chain logistics that is required. Indigenous vaccine capacity development that can also be linked and revised. And societal impact of immunization altogether can be read and revised. In this manner, this particular article is to be holistically seen, mapping all the possible angles that can be important from our exam perspective. Don't just shallowly go through the articles, but try mapping it with joining the dots of other paper as well. Moving on, the next important article that is there in the paper and that catches our attention talks about the mapping of India-China border. So when we map this particular article, this will fall under GS paper 1 under the theme history primarily, wherein maps, Shimla Conference of 1914, colonial legacies can be quoted. Also relevant for GS paper 2 IR, wherein boundary disputes and India-China relationship can be overall discussed and read about. For GS paper 3 as well, under the theme internal security, wherein border security can be quoted. The key theme that has been discussed in this particular article talks about historical maps from 1721, 1761, Manchu maps, 1914 alignment that talks about Arunachal Pradesh in particular. Afterwards, Aksai Chin dispute. All these things in a timeline and chronological manner has been talked about in this particular article. From prelims perspective, we can read and revise Shimla Conference of 1914. We need to know about McMahon line versus Johnson line, colonial map and alignment that has been done. From May's perspective, this particular article is to be seen through the lens of India-China bordering negotiations that is even ongoing till date, colonial map making and its legacy that has led to disputes in several territorial parts. Afterwards, for GS paper 3, security concerns and territorial disputes can be quoted. In this manner, this particular article is to be holistically seen. The next important article that is there in the paper and that talks about COP30. Now, when we go through this particular article, it falls under GS paper 3 under the theme environment and India to submit updated carbon reduction targets by the beginning of COP30 on November 10. Now, this is relevant with regard to GS paper 3 environment, climate change, NDCs, afterwards carbon market. How does it work? For GS paper 2 as well, IR, wherein climate diplomacy can be quoted, Paris Agreement can be quoted. The key theme that has been discussed in this particular article primarily talks about India's NDCs 3.0, wherein updated targets, carbon market, and global commitments have been talked about. Afterwards, from prelims perspective, the areas that needs our attention talks about NDCs under Paris Agreement. India targets around 45% emission intensity reduction, 50% from non-fossil fuel, that would be the power in the upcoming time, and COP30 that will happen in Brazil. So all these things are to be read and revised clearly. For paper 3, this is relevant with regard to mains, wherein balancing development at the same time climate commitments can be quoted. This is a real dilemma between developing countries, how they could balance their developmental requirement and at the same time commitments regarding climate diplomacy as well. Then India can also showcase its leadership in regard to climate negotiation that has seen often at times in the form of Global South, wherein India and China often collaborate when it comes to climate talks. Then this theme can even be quoted as an example wherein essay, climate justice and equity can be linked and revised. Afterwards, the last important article for the day is about tea sector of India. Huge scope for Indian tea sector. Every year, one or the other commercial crop or in general crop based questions has been asked in prelims. So this particular article, when we map it in our syllabus, will fall under GS paper 1 under the theme geography, that to particular economic geography, wherein tea plantation, climatic conditions that is required to grow them, the regions that is growing tea, all these things, and the type of tea, all these can be quoted. This is also can be quoted as a part of culture as well, wherein tea, the importance of tea and beverage in Indian society can be quoted. For paper 3 as well, wherein economy under the theme agriculture, exports and value additions can be quoted. Afterwards, India's tea production data that we have to read and revise, and I have already underlined it here. Exports, per capita consumption, exports destination, why is the need for quality improvement and looking for new market is the need of our. From prelims perspective, we need to know from data point of view, the state producing highest to lowest tea and what quality of tea are they producing. Afterwards, India's rank in production and at the same time, exports can also be read and revised. GI tag of tea, for example, Assam and Darjeeling region and Nilgiris also produce a lot of tea. So which all region have been given GI tag with regard to it. From mains perspective, doubling farmer income, agri exports, value addition of raw materials, and from essay, also this can be quoted. In this manner, this particular article is to be seen in today's paper. So this is all from my end.